Poor Maid mistakenly sheltered outside his mansion. Not knowing the man was a billionaire who'd make her his wife, she only wanted a dry place to survive the night. But one mistake at the wrong doorstep pulled her into the world of a man whose name he had never even heard. The rain had been falling for hours, turning the quiet street outside Los Angeles into a blur of silver and shadow. Marisa Jones pulled her thin jacket tighter around her body as another gust of wind pushed through the avenue. She had been fired only an hour earlier after taking the blame for a mistake she did not make. And now she had nowhere to go until she could afford next month's rent. Her shoes were soaked, her fingers numb, her pride aching. She whispered to herself, trying to steady her breath. Just get through tonight. Just tonight. Ahead of her, through the curtain of rain, a warm light glowed above a wide stone porch. The place looked like a boutique hotel, maybe a luxury rental. She could not see the full structure behind the tall hedges. Only marble steps and a canopy that promised shelter from the storm. Marisa hesitated. She was exhausted, shivering, and dangerously close to collapsing. 1 hour. Just to dry off, she murmured, stepping onto the porch. She curled up in the corner, hugging her backpack. Her eyelids fluttered with the weight of the day. She did not know it was not a hotel. She did not know the driveway hidden beyond the gated entrance belonged to Rowan Hale, one of the most private billionaires on the West Coast. She only knew the porch was warm, safe, and quiet enough to let her breathe. Her backpack slipped slightly as she drifted off, and with it, her small notebook slid out and landed on the stone floor. The covers were bent from years of use. Inside were the sketches of a dream she had never dared to speak aloud. Minutes passed. The rain softened, then the heavy front door behind her clicked. A tall figure stepped out, the glow from inside outlining his shape. Italian leather shoes paused inches from her curled form. Marisa jolted awake, eyes wide, heart hammering. She looked up into the steady, sharply focused gaze of a man who carried authority the way others carried a coat. His voice was low, controlled, not unkind. "Miss, are you hurt?" Marisa scrambled up, embarrassed, brushing water from her clothes. "I am so sorry. I thought this was a hotel. I only needed a place to stay dry for a moment. I did not mean to cause trouble." The man studied her, rain dripping from her hair, her trembling hands, the mud on her sleeves. She mistook him for a building manager. He looked nothing like one, but exhaustion blurred her judgment. "I will leave," she said quickly. "I promise." "I did not know." Something flickered behind his eyes. Rowan Hale rarely allowed strangers near his property. Security usually handled situations like this, not him. But the storm was harsh, and the woman in front of him looked like she had been fighting the world all day and losing. "Wait," he said softly. "You are freezing. Come inside for a moment to warm up." Marisa froze, unsure if she heard him correctly. I really do not want to intrude." "It is fine," Rowan replied. "At least until the rain settles." Her breath caught. It was the first kindness she had received in days. She nodded slowly, and with that single mistake on a rainy night, she stepped into the home of a billionaire she believed to be nothing more than a manager. Unaware that this moment would change the course of her entire life, Marisa stepped inside slowly, half afraid the warmth might disappear if she moved too quickly. The entryway opened into a wide living room filled with soft amber lighting and quiet furniture lines. Everything smelled faintly of cedar and fresh rain carried in from the open door. She wiped her shoes carefully on the mat, unsure if she was allowed to breathe in a place this polished. Rowan closed the door behind her without saying much. He studied her the way someone studies a painting they do not fully understand yet. Not suspicion, not pity. Just a silent evaluation of a stranger who clearly needed help more than she wanted to admit. "You can sit near the fireplace," he said. His voice remained calm, steady, almost gentle. "You are shaking." Marisa hesitated, then walked toward the armchair closest to the fire. The heat wrapped around her like a blanket. She kept her backpack clutched against her chest as if it was the last thing she owned in the world that felt safe. Rowan watched the way she pressed her fingers together, trying to hide their trembling. Would you like some tea? He asked. I do not want to trouble you, she replied. It is not trouble. He disappeared briefly into the kitchen. Marisa glanced around the room. The ceilings were high. The art on the walls looked original, not mass-produced. The fireplace mantel held a single framed photograph of a coastline at sunset. No family pictures. No personal clutter. A house that felt lived in but isolating at the same time. Her eyes drifted down to her own clothes, still damp and clinging to her skin. She felt painfully out of place, like she had stepped into a world she was not meant to see. When Rowan returned, he set a steaming cup on the low table in front of her. She whispered a soft thank you and wrapped her hands around the ceramic. The warmth seeped into her palms, finally slowing the shiver in her bones. He sat on the sofa across from her. You said you thought this was a hotel. She nodded quickly. I saw the lights in the porch. I was exhausted. I did not mean to trespass. Most people would not have mistaken this for a hotel, Rowan said carefully. You must have had a very long night. She let out a quiet breath. Long week, actually. Rowan did not push further, but his attention sharpened. What do you do for work? I clean houses, she said. Or I did. I lost my job today. She stared into the tea, trying to steady the sting in her chest. I am trying to keep up with rent, and I was hoping to pick up extra shifts, but things have not gone well. He listened without interruption. It surprised her. Most people rush to fill silence. Rowan allowed it to exist, as if silence had a right to speak to. Marisa added softly, I will be out of your way shortly. When the rain slows, I will leave. Rowan glanced toward the window. The storm showed no signs of easing. Winds pushed against the glass. Branches whipped in the dark. You should wait, he said. It is not safe right now. Marisa looked up at him, startled. I really do not want to impose. You are not imposing. His tone carried a quiet finality, the kind that came from a man who was used to being obeyed. But here, it did not sound controlling. It sounded protective. Another roll of thunder hit, making her flinch. Rowan's expression softened the slightest bit. Stay until the storm passes, he said. At least until then. Marisa nodded slowly. All right. Thank you. Silence settled again, but this time it was different. Less tense. Less guarded. As she sipped her tea, something on the floor near the doorway caught Rowan's eye. A small notebook. Worn, bent, clearly important. He walked over, picked it up carefully, and returned it to her. This fell when you were outside, he said. Marisa took it quickly, holding it close. Thank you. It is all right. Just notes. Rowan did not ask to look, but the way she held it told him it carried more than notes. Maybe her entire life mapped on those pages. A quiet realization formed in his chest. Whoever she was carrying far more weight than a single rainy night, and for reasons he could not yet explain. He did not want her to step back into that storm alone. The storm outside grew heavier. Drumming against the windows in a steady, relentless rhythm, Marisa sat quietly, warming her hands on the last sip of tea, trying to shake away the lingering anxiety of being in a stranger's home. Rowan watched her with an expression that was unreadable, but not cold. More like he was trying to understand which part of her story weighed the heaviest on her shoulders. She set the cup down carefully. I should not stay too long, she said. I know this is your home, and I do not want to cross any boundaries. Rowan leaned back slightly, his posture composed but not rigid. You are safe here, he replied. That is not a boundary you need to worry about. His certainty made something in her chest loosen, just a little. She nodded but did not meet his eyes, afraid he might read the truth in them, that she had nowhere else to go until morning. A quiet moment passed. The fire crackled. The rain pressed harder against the glass. Rowan spoke first. You mentioned you clean houses. How long have you been doing that? 5 years, she answered. I started at 18. My mother lives in Arizona. She has medical expenses, and I send what I can. Her fingers traced the edge of her notebook. Cleaning work is steady enough, but the pay depends on the client. And sometimes, people simply decide not to honor the agreed amount. He listened with an intent focus she was not used to. Most people treated cleaners as background noise. She continued softly. I kept telling myself it would get better this year. But losing today's job means I will fall behind again. Rowan considered that. His gaze dipped to the notebook in her hands. You guard that as if it is important. It is, she admitted. It is my list of jobs, ideas, notes from every home I cleaned. Things I would improve if I ever ran a cleaning service the right way. She paused, almost embarrassed. It is nothing big. Just a dream I have been carrying for a long time. A dream is never nothing, Rowan said. The words hit her unexpectedly. No one had ever said something like that to her. Not with that much sincerity. She looked at him fully for the first time since she stepped inside. His eyes were steady, dark, observant. Not judgmental, not pitying. Just present. Rowan cleared his throat quietly, almost as if he had said more than he intended. May I ask something? Yes, you walked a long distance in this storm. Why did you not call someone to help you? Marisa let out a faint breath. Because there is no one to call. The truth came out simply, honestly. I am alone here. All my family is back in Arizona. Rowan's expression shifted, a subtle flicker of something she could not identify. Not sympathy. Something deeper. I understand that feeling more than you might think, he said. She tilted her head slightly. You do? He nodded once, but he did not expand on it. The silence that followed did not feel uncomfortable. It felt like they were both acknowledging invisible wounds without asking the other to expose them. A sudden boom of thunder shook the windows. Marisa jumped a little, her hand clenching around the notebook. Rowan noticed. You are tired, he said. And the storm is not letting up. You can rest here for a while.
Eyes.
Her brows pulled together. You really do not mind? If I minded, I would not offer. Marisa hesitated, torn between exhaustion and caution. But the warmth of the room, the steady fire, and Rowan's calm tone made the decision for her. She relaxed into the chair, letting the tension slowly drain from her shoulders. Rowan stood. I will bring you a dry blanket. You will get sick if you stay in those wet clothes. When he walked down the hall, Marisa let out a shaky breath she had been holding for hours. The house was quiet, almost too quiet for a man who lived in a place this large. No voices, no footsteps besides his. No signs of anyone else. It made her wonder how someone could live with so much space and still feel so alone. When Rowan returned with a folded blanket, he draped it gently over the armrest beside her. Use it, he said. You do not have to force yourself to stay awake. Thank you, she whispered, as she pulled the blanket around her shoulders. Rowan paused, as if wanting to say something else. But instead, he simply gave a small nod. The fire continued its soft glow. The storm raged outside. And inside that quiet mansion, neither of them realized they had just stepped into the very first seed of something that neither money nor circumstance could have predicted. The fire had settled into a soft, steady glow by the time Marisa felt the last wave of cold lift from her body. Wrapped in the blanket Rowan had given her, she allowed her eyes to drift shut for a moment, just long enough to feel the exhaustion loosen its grip, but she forced them open again. Falling asleep in a stranger's home, no matter how kind he seemed, felt like crossing some invisible line she was not ready to cross. Rowan returned to the living room with 2 fresh glasses of water, placing one gently on the table near her. He did not look rushed. He did not look inconvenienced. If anything, he looked as if having someone else in the house shifted the air in a way he had forgotten was possible. You should drink, he said. She nodded and lifted the glass. Her hands were steadier now, no longer shaking from the cold. Thank you, she said quietly. For everything. Most people would have shut the door on me. Most people are not me, Rowan replied. His tone was calm, but something beneath it carried a weight she did not understand yet. You needed help. That is enough reason. Marisa looked down, unsure how to respond. People do not usually see someone like me and think worth helping. I do not see someone like you, Rowan said. I see a person who has been given far less care than she deserves. His words landed heavier than she expected. No softness, no pity. just truth spoken without hesitation. The storm outside rolled again. Wind slamming against the windows with a force that made the room tremble. Marisa tightened the blanket around her shoulders. "I always hated storms," she admitted. "Ever since I was a kid, they make everything feel so unstable." Rowan's gaze lowered to the flames. "When I was young, storms were the only thing that made me feel." Understood. Everything outside loud and chaotic. Everything inside quiet. It felt familiar. Marisa studied him. "You do not seem like someone who likes chaos." "I do not," he said. "But I grew up in it. Sometimes the only familiar thing is the one you wish you could forget." A silence followed, but it was a silence filled with a strange, gentle recognition. Two lonely lives brushing the edges of each other for the first time. Marisa shifted slightly, was careful not to disturb the quiet moment. "You live here alone?" she asked. "Yes." "No family visiting?" "No," he said simply. There was no bitterness in his voice, no sadness, just fact. But sometimes facts carried heavier echoes than emotion. The thunder cracked again. Louder this time, and Marisa startled visibly. Rowan noticed the way her breath caught, the way her fingers clutched the blanket tighter. "You are exhausted," he said. "You do not have to keep forcing yourself to sit up." "Do not want to be a bother?" she replied. "You are not a bother." There was that tone. Again. Steady. Certain. A tone that made it impossible to argue. Marisa finally leaned back in the chair, allowing her body to sink into the cushions. The warmth of the fire made her eyelids grow heavy. She tried to sit upright, embarrassed that she was even considering falling asleep. But Rowan gently motioned with his hand. "Rest," he said. "I will be here, so you do not have to worry." Her eyes lifted to his, uncertain. "You will be here." "I will stay in the room until you fall asleep," Rowan said. "Storms are easier to handle when you are not alone." The sincerity in his voice quieted something deep in her chest, something she had not allowed herself to feel in a long time. She shifted, letting her head rest against the side of the armchair. "Thank you," she whispered. A few minutes passed. The fire crackled softly. The storm thrashed outside. Rowan remained seated nearby, his presence steady and calm. Marisa's breathing slowed. Her eyes fluttered closed. She fell asleep to the sound of rain and the knowledge that, for the first time in a very long time, someone had chosen to stay. Rowan watched her for a moment longer. Her features were softer in sleep, no longer guarded by the weight of the day. He stood only when he was sure she would not wake easily, and adjusted the blanket more securely around her shoulders. He paused, his gaze resting on the notebook she held close even in sleep. He wondered what dreams lived in its pages, and why it mattered to him that she never had to chase them alone again. The storm finally broke near dawn. The pounding rain softened into a whisper, and pale morning light crept across the wide living room floor. Rowan stood near the window, arms folded loosely, watching the sky clear with a stillness that surprised even him. He had not slept. He did not feel the need to. The quiet presence of another person in the house had changed the air in a way he had not experienced in years. Behind him, Marisa shifted in the armchair, the blanket sliding slightly as she stirred. Rowan turned. Her breathing shifted, then her eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the soft morning light. The moment she realized where she was, she bolted upright. "Oh my goodness. I did not mean to fall asleep. I am so sorry." Rowan stepped forward calmly. "There is nothing to apologize for. You were exhausted." Marisa pressed her palm to her forehead, embarrassed. "I was supposed to leave when the rain stopped. I must have kept you awake." "I stayed because I chose to," he said simply. His tone was gentle, but firm enough to reassure her that she had not broken any boundaries she should fear. She gathered the blanket and folded it neatly. "Thank you for letting me stay inside. I really did not expect any of this." "You needed shelter," Rowan replied. "Most people forget that helping someone is not complicated." Marisa looked down at her worn shoes. "Most people do not agree with you." Rowan picked up her empty glass from the table. "Most people do not matter." The sincerity in his voice startled her. She watched him walk toward the kitchen as if he had lived his entire life speaking truth without seeking permission for it. When he returned, he handed her a fresh towel. "Dry your hair. The morning air is still cold." She took it carefully. "Thank you." As she gently patted her hair, she noticed the world around her again: high ceilings, gentle lighting, the subtle luxury in everything. This place was far from anything she'd ever stepped into. "Rowan," she began cautiously, "I really appreciate your kindness, but I should head out. I need to look for new work today." Rowan studied her for a brief moment. "You intend to walk in soaked shoes and go door to door?" "I do not have a choice," she admitted. "I cannot fall behind on rent again. I need to send money for my mother's prescriptions this week." He did not respond immediately. Instead, he reached for her notebook, which he had placed safely on the side table during the night. He held it out to her. "You dropped this," he said. "You held on to it even in your sleep." She took the notebook gently, her fingers tracing the creased cover. "It is nothing special." Rowan shook his head once. "I do not believe that." Marisa clutched the notebook to her chest. "It is just my ideas. Notes from the homes I cleaned. Ways to run a better cleaning service someday. But it is just dreams. Dreams do not pay rent. Dreams become plans," Rowan said. "Plans become opportunity." She looked at him, confused. "Why do you talk as if you know anything about my world?" His expression softened. "Because I understand what it means to build something from nothing, and because I know what it looks like when someone is doing everything they can just to survive another day." Her breath caught slightly, not because of his words, but because of the way he said them, quiet, honest, without judgment. A moment passed before she straightened her shoulders. "I really do have to go," she murmured. "I cannot stay here and pretend this is normal." Rowan nodded slowly. "Then at least let me call a car for you." "No," she said quickly. "Please. Already look at me like I do not belong places. I do not want to step out of a luxury car while trying to ask for work." Her voice tightened at the end. Rowan recognized the sound of someone who had been diminished too many times. He respected her request. "All right," he said. "But wait at least 10 minutes. The streets will be slippery." She agreed with a small nod, adjusting her backpack. As she reached the front door, she paused, turning back toward him. "Rowan," she hesitated, choosing her words with care. "Thank you for treating me like a person. You did not have to." He met her eyes with a steady calm. "You were never anything else." The warmth of his voice lingered as she stepped out onto the porch. Into the quiet morning after the storm, neither of them realized that this was not the end of their brief encounter. It was only the second beginning. Marisa walked down the steps of the porch with careful steps, the morning air cool against her skin. The storm had washed the neighborhood clean, leaving the streets glistening under the pale California sun. She pulled her jacket closer and kept her head down as she made her way toward the nearest bus stop. Her shoes were still damp, and each step reminded her that she was stepping back into a world where kindness was rare and survival was not guaranteed. She checked her phone. No messages, no job leads, no missed calls. Just a blank screen that mirrored the uncertainty in her chest. She thought about Rowan for a moment longer than she meant to. The steady voice, the calm presence, the way he treated her like she mattered. It unsettled her in a way she could not explain. People like him did not exist in her world. Men like him did not open doors for strangers or stay awake through a storm to make sure someone else felt safe. It was a strange kindness. A kindness she did not know what to do with. When the bus finally arrived, she stepped inside and sank into the last seat, letting her forehead rest lightly against the cold window. The city passed by in slow motion. Brick buildings, small shops, early commuters carrying coffee cups. It all felt oddly distant. She arrived back at her neighborhood, a place that always smelled like old pavement and overworked air conditioners. Her small apartment sat at the end of the hallway on the 3rd floor. She placed her key into the lock, hoping her landlord had not left another notice taped to the door. She pulled it off quietly. Rent late. Final reminder. Her stomach tightened, but she slipped inside without letting herself stop to feel anything. She set her backpack down, opened her notebook, and flipped through the pages as if answers might suddenly appear between the lines she had written over the years. Checklists, cleaning methods, supply costs. A dream she once believed she could reach if life gave her just one good break, but life rarely offered breaks to people like her. She exhaled slowly and headed to the kitchen sink to wash her face. The cold water helped, but only slightly. "I just need one job today," she whispered to her reflection. "Just one." She changed into her cleanest set of clothes and headed out again, house to house, block to block, asking, explaining, hoping. Every "sorry we are not hiring" chipped a little more at her confidence. By early afternoon, her feet ached and her throat felt raw. By sunset, she was exhausted. She stopped near a park bench, rubbing her hands together for warmth. She took out her notebook, intending to look through her remaining leads, when a shadow fell across the page. Marisa. Her head snapped up. Rowan stood in front of her, his suit jacket catching the last traces of sunlight. She blinked, unsure if she was imagining him. "What? What are you doing here?" she asked. "I was looking for you." Her heart stumbled in her chest. Rowan Hale, this quiet, self-contained man, had been looking for her. It did not make sense. "You should not be here," she said. "This is not your part of the city. I am aware," he replied. "But I wanted to return something important." She frowned. "You already returned my notebook." "That is not what I meant." He reached into his pocket and held up a small folded paper. It was her landlord's notice. Marisa's breath caught. "How did you—" "It was on your door this morning when you left," he said. "I made sure it did not fall into the wrong hands." She swallowed hard, trying to steady her voice. "You should not have touched that. That is personal," Rowan said gently. "Which is why I knew you would pretend it did not matter." Took a step closer, careful and deliberate. "I came because I wanted to ask if you were all right," he said. "You left this morning with more on your shoulders than you admitted. I did not want to bring my problems into your home." "You did not," Rowan replied. "But kindness does not end when the door closes." His words made her chest tighten. She looked away, embarrassed by how much they affected her. "I am fine," she insisted softly. "I just need to keep looking for work." Rowan watched her for a long moment. "You should not have to fight every battle alone." Marisa let out a shaky breath. "That is how my life works." "Then let me change the pattern," Rowan said quietly. Her eyes lifted to his, confused. "Why?" He held her gaze without wavering. "Because last night showed me something I have not felt in years," he said. "And because no one should carry the weight you carry without someone willing to stand beside them." The park fell silent around them. For the first time, Marisa did not know what to say. Rowan continued, his voice low and steady. "Come with me." "Where?" she whispered. "To a place where your work will not be dismissed, and where your dreams are not too small." And in that moment, under the fading light of evening, Marisa realized this was not a coincidence. This was the beginning of a connection that should never have existed, but somehow it did. Marisa followed Rowan out of the park, each step filled with uncertainty she could not hide. The evening air was cooling fast, and the city lights flickered on one block at a time. She kept a careful distance behind him, unsure if she was doing the right thing or simply being swept into something she did not fully understand. Rowan slowed his pace so she could walk beside him. "You look nervous," he said gently. "I am," she admitted. "I do not know where you are taking me." "You will see soon," he replied. "I promise it is nothing harmful." His reassurance steadied her for a moment, but her heart still raced. She had lived her whole life preparing for worst-case scenarios. People did not simply show up in parks, pick up your burdens, and offer help without wanting something in return. At least, that had always been her experience. But Rowan did not feel like those people, and that confused her more than anything else. 10 minutes later, he stopped in front of a tall building made of glass and stone. It towered over everything around it, lit from within like a beacon. The revolving doors gleamed under the streetlights. The marble steps looked untouched by the city's chaos. Marisa's breath caught. "This place. It looks expensive." "It is," Rowan replied calmly. "Come." She hesitated at the bottom of the steps. "I do not belong in a building like this." Rowan turned toward her, his expression firm but patient. "You belonged on my porch last night." You belong here now." It was the strangest form of comfort she had ever heard, but something in his tone made it impossible to argue. She climbed the steps slowly. When they reached the doors, a security guard nodded to Rowan with immediate respect. "Good evening." "Mr. Hale," the guard said. Marisa froze. Mr. Hale? The name hit her with a force that made her chest tighten. She had seen that name before. On billboards. On commercial properties across the city. On cleaning contracts she once dreamed of securing someday. Her voice wavered. "Rowan, what is your last name?" He held her gaze, and for a second, he looked almost regretful. "Hale," he said quietly. "Rowan Hale." She felt the ground tilt beneath her feet. You are the owner of Hale Properties." "The Hale." "Yes," he said simply. The world rushed in all at once. His home, his silence, the way the staff greeted him, the way he never answered her questions too directly. He had not lied, but he had never corrected her assumptions either. Her stomach twisted. "So last night? You'll let me believe you were just a manager. Let you believe what made you comfortable," Rowan replied. "You were terrified. You needed safety, not intimidation." Marisa stepped back. "You should have told me the truth." Rowan took a small step forward, keeping his voice steady. "I did not want my name to change the way you spoke to me. You were honest with me because you thought I was just a man offering shelter. I wanted to keep that before anything else." Our heart pounded painfully. She had lost jobs, homes, and chances because of people with power. She had spent years building her pride piece by piece, and now she felt foolish for trusting kindness so quickly. "I should go," she whispered. "Turning away, Marisa," Rowan said, his voice suddenly rough with urgency. "You walking away because of my name proves exactly why I did not lead with it." She stopped but did not turn around. "All I ask," Rowan continued softly, "is that you do not let who I am on paper erase who we were in that storm." His words hung in the cool night air, slowly. Marisa looked over her shoulder, her eyes conflicted but searching. Rowan held her gaze with a quiet steadiness. He had revealed the truth. Now she had to decide what to do with it. Marisa stood at the entrance of the gleaming building, her breath unsteady as she tried to make sense of what she had just learned. Rowan Hale. The Rowan Hale. A man whose name was printed on signs throughout the city. A name she had whispered once as a distant dream. While imagining having even one contract from his company, now he stood in front of her, not as a distant millionaire, but as the same man who held open his door during a storm and made her tea. Without asking for anything in return, Rowan took a slow step toward her. "I brought you here because I wanted to show you something that matters." Marisa swallowed hard. "What could possibly matter to someone like you?" Rowan motioned for her to follow, then led her through the lobby. Staff nodded respectfully as they passed, but Rowan did not slow. He guided her to an elevator, and the doors closed behind them with a quiet chime. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "You should not be doing this for me." "I know exactly what I am doing," Rowan replied, "and it is not charity." When the elevator doors opened, they stepped into a wide conference room filled with natural light. Floor 2 ceiling windows overlooked the entire city. The room was empty except for one long table and a large digital screen across the wall. Rowan walked ahead and tapped a button. The screen lit up. Marisa froze. Her notebook logo, the one she drew by hand, appeared on the display. The curved letters, the simple design, the dream she kept hidden from everyone. She blinked, unable to process what she was seeing. "How did you?" "You left your notebook open for a moment while you slept," Rowan said gently. "I saw the sketches, the plans, the cost breakdowns. You have a business in there, Marisa. A good one." Her heart thudded painfully. "It is just a dream. I do not have the money. I do not have the clients. You do not have support," Rowan finished for her. "That is what you have been missing." Marisa shook her head, overwhelmed. "Why are you doing this?" "For once," Rowan said, "I want to use my resources to build something that actually matters. Not another tower. Not another luxury property. Something meaningful. something driven by someone who understands real work. She felt herself trembling. You barely know me. I know enough, Rowan replied. I know you work harder than most people I have ever hired. I know you do not take shortcuts. I know you care about doing things the right way. And I know you have carried this dream alone for far too long. Her eyes burned, but she refused to let tears fall. This does not make any sense. It does to me. Rowan stepped closer. I want to fund your cleaning business. Your ideas? Your system? Your name? Not mine. She stared at him, stunned. Why me? Rowan held her gaze, his voice soft, but unmistakably certain. Because you were the first person in a very long time who looked at me and did not see a billionaire. You saw a man. I will not forget that. For a moment, neither of them moved. The city stretched out below them, distant and booming, as if the world had gone quiet just for them. Marisa's voice cracked. I do not know what to say. Say yes, Rowan replied. Say you will let me invest in your dream. Say you will let me help you build something that belongs to you. Her hands shook as she looked at the screen again. Her dream, her scribbles, her ideas, all displayed in a room she'd never imagined stepping into. For the first time in years, something inside her dared to hope, and in a soft, trembling breath, she whispered, yes. Weeks passed like chapters in a new book Marisa had never believed she would get to read. With Rowan's support, her small dream transformed into a structured plan. Meetings were arranged. Licenses filed. Equipment purchased. Rowan never overshadowed her decisions. He stood beside her, not above her, letting her lead every step of the way. The day her business officially launched, Marisa stood in a new office that smelled faintly of fresh paint and lemon polish. A simple wooden sign hung on the wall behind her desk, carved with the same logo she once drew in her notebook. When she touched the smooth surface, she felt the weight of every long shift, every setback, every moment when she had thought survival was her only purpose. Now she had something more than survival. She had direction. Rowan entered the room quietly. Watching her take in the space she had built from a life most people overlooked, you look proud, Rowan said. I am, Marisa replied softly. I never thought I would see any of this. You earned all of it, Rowan said. I just made sure the door was not locked when you arrived. His presence carried the same steady warmth he had offered on the night of the storm. But today, something in his gaze carried deeper meaning. A kind of admiration she did not know how to return with words. They walked toward the window overlooking the street where her first clients would soon arrive. Marisa held her notebook close, the same worn pages that had started everything. Rowan noticed the way her fingers rested on it, with the same reverence she had held the night. She slept on his porch. You never answered my question, Rowan said gently. Marisa turned to him. What question? The one I asked without saying it. Whether you would let me stay in your life after this? Her breath stilled. He stepped closer, his voice low but unwavering. I did not help you because I felt pity. I helped you because I saw your strength long before you saw mine. And somewhere in the middle of that storm, I found something I did not realize I had been missing. Marisa felt her pulse quicken, a warmth blooming in her chest. She searched his eyes and found no expectations, no pressure, only sincerity. All I want, Rowan continued, is to walk beside you. Not ahead of you, not behind you. She exhaled slowly, emotion softening every line of her face. Rowan, I never planned for someone like you to be part of my life. Neither did I, he said. But here we are. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a familiar object. The very blanket he had draped over her shoulders the night she fell asleep by his fire. It was cleaned, folded, and wrapped with a small ribbon. You kept this? She whispered. It is a reminder, Rowan said, of the night our worlds crossed by accident. In the moment I realized I never wanted them to separate again, Marisa felt her heart swell. Not from rescue, not from gratitude, but from recognition. A man who had everything had chosen to offer her not wealth, but partnership, respect, purpose, a chance at a future built together. She stepped closer, her voice steady. Then stay. Stay in my life on purpose." Rowan's expression softened, and he reached for her hand, holding it with a quiet care that felt like a promise in that simple gesture. The storm that once brought them together no longer felt like a mistake. It felt like fate. And as they stood in the office of the company she'd built from the scraps of a worn notebook, Marisa realized she had gained more than a business. She had found a man who chose her long before he revealed his name. A man who stood beside her even when she tried to walk away. Their story, once shaped by a chance encounter on a cold night, now moved forward with intention. A future built not on status, but on purpose. Not on wealth, but on kindness. And for the first time in her life, Marisa did not feel alone.